So welcome everyone. I am Darcy Purcell. I am here with, I'm honored to be here with Lorna Bennett, who was one of our amazing experts on the Metaphysically Fit Summit. We had a lot of people who were interested in learning more from her, and she is going to come to us regularly in the MetaFit studio and support us in all sorts of ways. So I'm just going to quiet down now. I'm going to turn it over to Lorna.
Thank you all for being here. It's wonderful to see your faces and your backgrounds popping up. Again, my name is Lorna Bennett. I'm a mindfulness, meditation, and movement teacher, as well as a relationship and intimacy coach. I'm 48, and I like to joke that I've had 9 lives professionally. So in addition to being cat-like in that way, I would say that a common denominator under all of my professional experience would be being a catalyst for change, or a change catalyst. What else can I share in this moment? I'm back in school again, pursuing a second master's degree at Naropa University, which some of you might be familiar with it. It's a Buddhist university, and I'm studying mindfulness-based transpersonal counseling, which is a mouthful, I realize, but mindfulness being the foundation of much of my life, and certainly something I'm re-immersing in as a student, again, at the right young age of 48. What else can I say? I'm passionate about the intersection of mindfulness and relationship and intimacy, and how do we get both the experience of freedom that we desire in this human life, as well as the love and connection that we deeply yearn for and crave. So that's what we're here to practice and dive into today. And again, just thank you for being here. It's always so, Darcy and I were saying before we came on, there's something so sweet always about coming together like this and just seeing faces and seeing you all show up for a topic like this, because, you know, sometimes it's easy to sort of create a story over here that, oh, I'm the only weird one who cares about talking about these things. So thank you for your interest. I'd love to have us drop right in to an experiential, a practice. So to do that, and this is no big deal, so I want everyone to come into this feeling relaxed, but I'm adjusting myself, and feel free to adjust yourself to find a comfortable seat, one that is upright, but not uptight. And feel free to keep your eyes open if that feels more comfortable for you. And if you'd like to close your eyes, you can go ahead and do that now. And we'll just begin by arriving. So just feel what it is to arrive. Arriving in your body, arriving in your breath, arriving in this moment. And then begin to notice the breath. So there's nothing to do here, but rather just notice that the breath is here. And notice the sensations of your body breathing you. And now I'd like to invite you to tune into the sensation of sound. So first of all, see if you can notice the farthest away sound. What's the farthest away sound that you can notice right now? And then come to close in. What is the closest in sound that you can notice right now? And the last thing I'll invite you to notice is a resource available to you right now. So that's anything that feels like a support or an anchor in this moment. That might be noticing your hands, your feet. It might be noticing your heart or the feeling of your seat. Returning to that resource at any time. The last thing we'll do here is I invite you to bring into your mind and your embodied memory right now an early experience of love. And noticing what comes up with that. You might notice joy. You might notice some sadness. Darcy, maybe we could just do a quick mute all. We can do that. It's okay. It's okay. Such is life. Life always keeps happening, and that's
Yeah.
part of meditation.
Yes. Sandy, if you could mute yourself. Oh, well, actually, look, I can mute you. That's all right, Sandy. I'll take care of you.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you, Darcy. Just coming back to that early experience of love and noticing what arises for you in recalling that. And holding whatever arises with an attitude of compassion, friendliness. Everything gets to be here. So just taking a few more seconds with that. What was that early experience of love like? Coming back one more time to your resource. Allowing yourself to receive that support. And then one more time, coming back to sound. What is the farthest away sound that you can notice in this moment? What is the closest in sound you can notice in this moment? And gently, slowly, sweetly, there is no rush. Starting to come back to this space. And coming back to one another. Thank you. Thank you for doing that practice. And I'd like to just give a tiny bit of space for you to either write down or take mental note of anything that you noticed in that practice for yourself. Anything you noticed. Excellent. And then what we'll do for structure here is I'll move into talking a little bit. There are 3 big umbrella points that I'd love to share with you, and I'd love for you to have as takeaways from our time together. And after I touch upon those 3 things, what Darcy and I would love to do is open this up to open forum questions. And as Darcy mentioned, you can put those in chat. Again, maybe jot them down as they arise for you now, or take mental note. You can put them in chat, and then Darcy will help relay those, and we'll get to as many as we can get to. And I'll also make sure you know how to get in touch with me if you'd like to dive deeper into this after this engagement. Okay, so the first umbrella topic that I'd love to talk about with regard to mindfulness in love comes from the realm of psychology. And that is that we all have 2 core human needs. We can boil all of our needs down to essentially 2. And those 2 core human needs are, number 1, authentic self-expression, and number 2, love and connection. So, to state perhaps the obvious, authentic self-expression relates to self, a sense of self. Can I be myself here? Who am I? What are my needs? Love and connection relates to other. How do I experience intimacy, connection with other out there? So the interesting thing about these 2 needs is that most of us, well, let me back up. All of us will learn in infancy to prioritize love and connection over authentic self-expression. And the reason we do that is because we're beautifully intelligent human beings. We come out of the womb with this intelligence, and we need love and connection in order to survive. So, having a preference for survival, we learn very early on to, in some ways, self-abandon, or in some ways to have eclipsed our own authentic self-expression in favor of staying in love and connection, because we need that. We need that to survive. So I mentioned that because I think that's really important to normalize the experience of perhaps in adulthood, recognizing that we have these patterns of self-abandonment, or we have these strategies for staying in love and connection that may not, looks like Maria, if you are not on mute, maybe just check your settings. If you could hit mute. Thanks, everybody. Core human needs. Any questions about that? You can feel free to put in chat, or Darcy, anything you want to jump in with on that one before we move on to the next?
No and yes, all at the same time. Just, I want to see where you're going before I start asking
Yep,
questions.
absolutely. So the second big umbrella topic comes from the realm of sacred sexuality, or yogic practices around intimacy. And there are two is the magic number here, apparently. There are two energies at play in intimate relationship that rarely get talked about and that are always happening and present underneath the surface of things. So those two energies we'll call resonance and polarity. So first I'll say a little bit about resonance. Resonance comes from togetherness. Resonance has to do with similarity or sameness. Resonance has to do with us feeling the experience of connection with other through closeness. So I keep doing this with my fingers too. Resonance is a lot of this. Resonance is beautiful. Some of the benefits of what comes from resonance, what resonance creates, is a sense of safety, security, stability, trust. So an example of resonance or meeting in resonance would be perhaps your partner is going through something and experiencing grief, and they're just really in a state of sadness. A resonant experience in that would be joining them. And it would be a lot of, I too know that grief. I too know that sadness. And you're in it together. You're experiencing that grief and that sadness together. That's an experience of resonance. Resonance creates intimacy. Too much resonance means or creates no spark. We're best friends and there's no desire. That would be an example of too much resonance. Polarity, and Darcy, again, feel free to jump in after I describe these. Polarity is about separateness. So the opposite of this. Polarity is about this. You could picture the positive and the negative aspects of magnets. Polarity is about difference and attraction by way of difference and distance. Polarity is what creates desire. Polarity requires space. So we could say a lot about that too. A little subpoint of space as a love language, even. And this is the space of sexual charge or the playground of sexual charge and eroticism, erotic play. That's what polarity is all about. So I think I already, big picture, mentioned an example of polarity, the two sides of a magnet. When we talk about or have had the experience sometimes of opposites attracting, we're talking about an experience of polarity in that. Too much polarity will look like conflict. Too much polarity will look like conflict and disconnection, possibly a lack of trust and safety. That would be too much polarity. So most of us, not all of us, to be clear, many of us desire both. You know, when you heard me describing resonance, was there a part of you that could really relate to that? Yes, I know that experience. Yes, I desire that experience in relationship. And when I described polarity, was there a part of you, or were there parts of you that were a yes? Yes, I want that desire. I want that feeling of the erotic tension that comes in separateness. Most of us want both in our relationships and in our lives, and have no idea how to consciously cultivate either, or even that they are forces at play. So I'll just pause there for a moment and see, do we automatically flip to self-expression in teenage? Oh, I love that. Whew, good question. In many ways, yes. In many ways, yes. And just to put a fine point on that, and we're always wanting both of those two core human needs. So it becomes this interesting dance in our lives of how we play out both, and how we develop strategies, some more serving and life enhancing than others, to get both of those needs met. But yeah, I love that question. And certainly we see that self-expression piece very alive in the teenage developmental phases.
So Lorna, I'm just going to speak to myself, and maybe this will resonate for other people. I feel as if I prioritize love and connection to a fault, and I don't even know that I'm doing it. I don't even know what authentic self-expression might look like. So can you just take us down a little path there, maybe?
Well, part of me wants to immediately say, is that true? Is that true that you don't know what authentic self-expression looks like? Because it seems like you just did it. Right?
That's great.
You just, yeah, I mean, these are such interesting things. Again, sometimes just naming, sometimes just putting into the field, hey, we have these two core human needs: authentic self-expression, love and connection. The first time I heard that clearly articulated, I just had this moment of, well, that just explained my whole life and all of these ways that I thought I was crazy in my suffering. So I think just putting it out into the field can be beautiful in terms of normalizing some of our human experience, as well as bringing into consciousness, bringing into awareness what was previously unconscious. So I would imagine that you will begin noticing more, oh, that's a moment where I'm really craving love and connection. Or, and sometimes we notice right after the fact, right? Oh, back there was a moment where I left myself or left authentic self-expression in order to stay in love and connection. And again, the more we bring into conscious awareness, and this is what mindfulness is doing for us, the more we have the ability to have choice. We have agency in how we respond and how we relate. So, maybe I'll just bridge to our third umbrella topic there, and then we can bring it all into the conversation and see what's alive for people in chat. But our third theme today, and what I believe is an answer or part of the answer to these first two topics, and a bridge bringing the realm of human psychology and human needs, bridging that with, I'm calling it sacred sexuality, yogic practices around intimacy. I think a way to bridge those two worlds is mindfulness, or the practices of mindfulness. And so first, to just define mindfulness, on the surface of things, the word is a little funny in that it conjures up mind or something that is occurring that's heady, when mindfulness is really much more about the body. When we're practicing mindfulness, mindfulness is conscious awareness of what our embodied experience is right now. What is happening with thoughts? What is happening with physical sensations? And what is happening with energy in motion, emotion, in and around my experience right now? If I'm observing and consciously aware of all of those things, I'm practicing mindfulness, which is really about dropping into my body. Usually thinking has more to do with ruminating on the past or anxiously projecting into the future. So we're not often here when we're engaged in thought. When we practice mindfulness, what we potentiate is awareness, and via awareness, choice. Suddenly we have available to us infinite possibilities for responding to life and to love that were not available to us before, when we were in the realm of unconscious behavior, which has to do with habit and learned strategies in the body that usually come from childhood and are often rooted in wound and unmet needs. So we get awareness and choice. And this would be a whole other juicy workshop that we could do, but one of the things that we can begin to develop more awareness and choice around are these practices of resonance and polarity, which gets really fun in relationships, love, sex, intimacy, because then we can start to play with all these energetic possibilities. And in the world of the yoga of intimacy, often labels that could put on different energies would be called masculine practices or masculine energies, feminine practices, feminine energies. So I just want to put a little side note on, I'll use those words right now for a second, masculine, feminine, and that has nothing to do with gender, how we identify, the type of genitalia we were born with or have. It has to do with energies that we all have within us and available to us at any time. We can animate red or blue. We could just put different words there. So I just want to make a caveat of, when I say masculine, I'm not talking about only men do this, for example, or when I say feminine, I'm not talking about only women do this. We all have all available to us and alive within us. So, but once we have awareness and choice, we might choose to animate the masculine, which would include practices that are very centered around presence. Or another maybe word for that would be consciousness, awareness, breath, and stillness. Those would be three traditionally masculine practices. Three feminine practices would be animating more movement, bringing more movement to a moment. Energetic expression would be part of feminine practice, as well as energetic range. So not just one energy, but the whole range of energies available. Often it gets said pleasure, the experience and expression of pleasure as a feminine practice. And I think I would just edit that or add the word expression of what is true in the moment. It may be pleasure, and pleasure is often available to us, but it can be a beautiful feminine practice to animate and express and reveal rage. That could be another feminine expression that would serve a moment. So I'm looking at my notes here to see, I think I hit on the main themes there. And I'd love to pause and see what's coming up for you. You can put things in chat, and let me just recap too, kind of where we've been. So we came into this container doing a mindfulness practice. We very briefly were just invited to recall an early experience of love. And it can just be interesting to notice, where does our mind go? Where does our memory go? We dropped into that. There's usually something interesting there in terms of what we learned early on about love. We talked about the two core human needs. We talked about these two energies that are at play in intimate relationship, whether we're conscious of them or not. They're happening, they're here. And we talked about mindfulness as a bridge or a potentiator for more possibility in how I relate to myself, more possibility in how I relate to you, other, partner, lover, and more possibility in how I relate to life, what my experience is in this human embodied form. Let me just add, and then I really will pause. 3 practices. These are 3 simple, well, seemingly on the surface, simple practices. And I think once we get into these, sometimes we realize, whew, these are muscles I haven't flexed recently or maybe ever. But 3 simple practices that you could bring into your life and start playing with in your relationships right now would be, one is presence. And you practice that by doing what we did at the beginning of this container. You practice that by, we connected with breath. Doesn't have to be any big deal, anything fancy, just noticing that the breath is here and the breath is happening in the body. We did that by connecting with sound. I love to use the senses to come into this moment. It's pretty hard to be lost in thought, ruminating or projecting when you're focusing on the farthest away sound and then focusing on the closest in sound. That tends to bring us into the body and into this moment pretty effectively. And I'd be curious what your experience is with that. It's great to play with what works for you. So we did breath, sound, and I invited you to find a resource. What in your body felt like a resource? Your feet, your seat, your heart, your hands, just to name a few things. So presence is a practice that you can play with throughout your day, doing those things. One you can do with a partner would be playing with eye contact and just noticing the power of eye contact, how you habitually do it or don't do it, what it is like to commit to a practice of holding and maintaining eye contact for a certain amount of time that you would choose. And a way that I would suggest practicing this, and you can do this with a consenting partner as well, if you like, but is to point to your left eye. Each of you point to your left eye and gaze into your partner's left eye. And there are some, interesting tantric reasons for that. The left eye and tantra being associated with receptivity. And it also just makes nice logistical sense, practical sense, because it can be a little weird to try to maintain eye contact when you're trying to pick an eye, right? So just choosing that left eye, maintaining eye contact, And a third practice, if you can get that far, if you can get as far as coming into the present moment, maintaining eye contact. A third practice, seemingly simple on the surface, and I find this one to be really a lot more challenging than I ever think it's going to be, is finding your partner's breath, watching this other person in front of you, finding their breath. And once you've found it, breathing with them. So matching your partner's breath. Those three things can be beautiful mindfulness practices to bring into your relationship right now, and to just notice what you notice what comes up within you, what feels really beautiful and natural, what feels incredibly uncomfortable or confronting, what you gravitate to, what you resist, and beginning to play with possibilities that open up for you there. I'll pause.
I want to speak to the eye contact, the left eye practice. I have found it to be just, it can just transcend and change a relationship. I know folks that run around and have little ones, and they don't have time to connect any longer. A moment in the kitchen every morning, hold hands, look in the left eye, and until you drop in. And it's what you just took a nice deep breath. When they inhale together, it's over. Until then, you just stare into their left eye. And I'm just going to say everyone should go home and try it with anybody, a friend. I remember my son came back from a retreat and he had learned how to do it. He's like, "Ma, look at my left eye." I was almost in tears, because you really see someone's soul, and you really connect on a completely different level when you do that particular practice. So if you take nothing away from this, please try that.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. It is such a powerful practice. And I love your language around until you drop in. And, feel that moment. Sometimes it feels like an exhale. Sometimes it feels like a grounding down into the belly, into the pelvis, into the legs, into the feet. For me, it feels like a shifting of energy from being very heady up here, almost like a whoomph into the body. I land in my body. You'll know what it feels like for you, but there is a very distinct dropping in that occurs.
Especially if that hearing the pattern of, I don't feel connected to my partner, this will be no words, quick minute or two, and the connection will be back. And so I just challenge folks to get curious and potentially just say for the week to your partner, we're going to do this every morning for a week. We're going to see what we see, and just see if it makes a difference, and let us know. I know it will. So yeah, that's I really enjoy that practice.
Yeah, and so many of these practices are, as you said, Darcy, no words practices. Many of the most powerful ones are. So I think that's an important thing to notice, that we tend to culturally, as well as in the world of psychology, I tend to prioritize language and words. I was an English journalism major. I love finding the perfect words. And we can get really lost in the weeds with that in our intimate relationships, where it may not be at all about finding the perfect words. It may be about dropping into this present moment and making connection that is meaningful in a much bigger and broader way.
There was a question about
Looking at your
left
left eye, do you close your right eye? That's a great question. No, you don't. So you're just having that as a focal point so that you don't have to have the experience of trying to look at both eyes or not know which eye to choose. You just stay with the left eye. And in the practice of eye gazing, we'll talk about using a soft gaze. And a great way to describe the experience of what a soft gaze feels like, it's like the way you would gaze at a fire, a flame, a candle. You have that soft gaze that isn't focused or searching for one thing. It's just a beautiful, open, wide field gaze.
And another thing that you said very early on, everything is welcome. Every time you say that, I just take a nice deep breath, that there's no wrong way to do this if your intention is to connect with whatever the practice was in the beginning, it was the early memory of love. But if we're doing an eye gazing practice, everything is welcome.
Everything is welcome. And, again, I think we can underestimate the healing power, whether we're doing this for and with ourselves or for and with another. Simply being a loving, kind, compassionate yes to whatever is here. One of my teachers would say the isness of the moment. Whatever the isness of the moment is, if we can be a yes to that and a kind, compassionate, spacious yes to that, that alone can be so healing for that piece or that part or that sad that always felt like something was wrong with it, or it wasn't welcome here, it wasn't allowed here, it signaled something is wrong. So just to allow it to be and to acknowledge it, that alone can be incredibly healing.
And I'm looking at the time, we have a little time left. So I know you mentioned the resonance and polarity, and do we have time to play a little bit with something there?
Yes, I think we do. Let's do it. And it's a big topic. A lot to pull apart there.
Yeah, but if you could just walk us through some sort of lovely example, that would be.
Yeah, well, and feel free if anyone has anything in the chat that they'd love to chat. An example, or I guess I would say complaint can often be an easy and interesting doorway into an underlying desire or unmet need. So if, each of us just kind of took a moment to pause and contemplate, what's a common complaint that I have about my partner or in my relationship? A common complaint that I hear in long-term relationship, and that I can certainly relate to, is sustaining desire. How do I desire my partner who is also the person who sees me when I'm ugly crying and ugly cries with me, and who I take the garbage out with, and who I pay the bills with, and who I raise the children with, and pick up the dog poop with, and all of the things? How could it possibly be that could be the same person I would passionately desire hours or moments later? And that's where awareness of resonance and polarity becomes so poignant and so powerful. And that's where there are practices, again, whether we're calling them masculine, feminine, or assigning our own labels to them, different labels to them, we can in any moment, move from resonance to polarity just by playing with those polarizing energies. And this is what I love to work with individuals on. How are those energies playing out in your relationship? What are your patterns in your own life? And what becomes possible when there's conscious creation of energies moment to moment is this infinite playground of possibility with one person, with one partner. And, again, this would be a whole other thing, but I think that's why I have a lot of compassion around why different types of relationships are becoming something that people are really interested in and exploring these days. Why all of a sudden is there all this interest in open relationships? Why all of a sudden is there all this interest in polyamory? And I'll just say that it makes sense because we have this broad range of needs and we want resonance and we want polarity. And it sort of on the surface of things just seems this easy answer. Well, we need more people. We need more partners to play all of these possibilities out. And I don't mean to disparage whatever choices people make. Maybe that is the right choice for you. And it's not necessarily true that we need more people. We just need more awareness of what becomes possible within our own bodies and beings once we understand these energies and what's available to play with.
I love that. As we wrap up, if anybody has any questions, drop them into the chat, and I'm gonna ask you to remind us about that beautiful practice of opening and reminding ourselves.
Am I opening or am I closing that one?
Yeah, am I turning myself on, turning myself off? I would love for you to just end this by talking about that again, because I think it's so helpful.
I love that. Yeah. And it is a nice return back to mindfulness. When we practice mindfulness, we're practicing being in our bodies. We're dropping into this moment. We're noticing what's occurring in this moment. Oh, those are the thoughts that my brain is thinking. Oh, these are the sensations that my body is experiencing. Oh, this is the emotional energy that's occurring. And we might even name that. I am noticing some grief. And as part of that, we can also notice and really just ask this simple question, moment to moment to moment in our lives. In this moment, am I opening or am I closing? Another way to ask it would be, in this moment, am I turning myself on or am I turning myself off? And in asking that question, we are present, we are aware, we are here, we are alive, we are conscious, and we suddenly have the capacity for choice. And in choice, we have infinite possibility for creativity, for creating new experiences for and with ourselves, with others, and as we co-create and move through life and this human experience. So yeah, simple question.
It makes me so happy. I always love it. What I like about the wording of, am I turning myself on or turning myself off versus opening and closing, which is something I have, been working with for so many years, is that ownership
Yes.
There's something about saying, am I turning myself on or off? And like, as you were talking, I reminded myself, okay, am I sitting in a way that's turning myself on or off? I'm like, okay, sit up, open your heart for that reason.
Yes.
So I just really appreciate that wording. It's very evocative and
I
awesome.
love that word ownership. And in that ownership lies freedom. In that ownership comes agency, because what we've done is we've removed conditionality. We've removed the conditions for our own happiness, or we've removed, I'll soften that a bit even and say, I've removed the conditions for my own okayness. What suddenly becomes possible is my own okayness is available to me here now, no matter what. It has nothing to do with A, B, C, D, and E requirements being met out there, or by life, or by my partner.
I was going to say, and then your partner isn't being held to that responsibility. You're like, I'm
We're
here, right?
both free in that loving dynamic.
Yeah. I love it. Cheryl shared, this was great. I learned something new, even though I've been working on myself for over 50 years. So thank you. So
Cheryl.
Lorna, you're awesome.
Yeah, and again, I always love to hear, Cheryl, I'd love to hear what it is that was new for you and what you got. So I would just invite you, if this was such a this was foreplay, it was a little tease of all of these topics. If you're interested in going deeper, I'd love to hear your experience, what you got, what you would have loved more of in this container. And if you're just interested in connecting to talk about if it would be a good fit for us to work together, and or just to have me help with resources, pointing you in different directions to learn more about these things. That's one of my favorite things to do, is talk about my favorite things.
This is where we originally met, right?
To talk about this all day, every day. So connect with me on social media. I'm not the most active person on social media, and I am there and I have a presence there. So you can find me under Lorna Bennett Coaching on Instagram. That looks like Lorna_Bennett_coaching. You can also email me at Lorna@lornabennettcoaching.com. And
her info is on the website, MetaFit Studio. And when we send out the replay, we'll remind folks how to find you. And Lorna has generously offered her talents up to the studio. So we'll be doing, gosh, probably every month, every 6 weeks, we'll be doing some different topics. So in this vein, though, because it's a good item.
Thanks for that reminder, because send your requests.
Yeah,
it's always so much more fun.
I'll send out an
when
email
we're responding to what's really alive, and what would you love to have a whole workshop on. Let's do it.
Maybe we'll do even like a little survey. Well, because there's some things that you have said that I'm like, I wouldn't have even thought of that. That's a great idea. So maybe we'll have an open and then sort of ideas swimming around in Lorna's head. Because when I let Lorna just kind of drive where we're going, it's always a beautiful journey. So I always learn so much from you, Lorna. So thank you so much.
Well, that's mutual, Darcy. You're always guiding and grounding the information so artfully.
Well, thank you, everyone. Replay will be out in a couple days. I'm going to go back to my other retreat now. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Thank you all.
Have a great day.